And when you don't have income, when you don't have revenue, rural hospitals have shut down, rural banks have shut down. 70% of the counties in America that index as food insecure are in rural America, housing crisis, etc. And so when I'm out in the country, and I'm there quite frequently with farmers or in these communities, it's present that you have these conversations and you try to understand what's going on with their families. 90% of farms are still family owned. These are families, many of whom could be considered hobby farmers because they have to work off the farm, driving a truck, teach in school, in order to feed their own families. Okay, so that is a terribly difficult situation, and what you're seeing happen, dramatic consolidation, issues of profitability, and, as you know, the trade agenda.
Well, it's a really complex picture, and thank you for painting that for us, especially for those of us who are not immersed in the day-to-day of agriculture and our food system. Another layer to this, as Ellie alluded to, is that you have become immigration chair for the Business Roundtable, taking on this issue of the impact of immigration policy and enforcement on both your industry and now every industry representing the Business Roundtable. A lot of CEOs are concerned about the impact of immigration enforcement and policy on their businesses, especially in industries that do rely heavily on undocumented labor, but a lot won't talk about it in public. So why did you take that position, and why are you willing to talk about it?
Well, I think most CEOs would talk about the importance of a couple of things. One, first, starting with border security. Clearly, border crossings in the southern border have declined, say, 95%. That's a primary issue. I think the administration was looking for appropriate funding. You saw that in the tax bill that passed. Most CEOs will say we need some kind of change in our immigration policy. We need more legal immigration, and that is one of the things that is an economic driver for businesses, for the economy. We should all want that. So while there might be some discussion on undocumented, et cetera, this is critical for the health of the economy, for economic growth, et cetera. Now, why would I have taken on that responsibility? First of all, it is differential. It is absolutely critical for the farmer that they have labor, immigration. These are folks who oftentimes try to get American labor, are struggling to do so. And so they absolutely need labor, and if they don't have it, that's yet another element, and it can be a black swan event for a farmer if they don't have somebody who can help and be on farm. So when I was asked would I chair this committee, Tim Cook had been chairing it. I had been sitting on this committee. BRT is comprised of the top, say, 220, 230 corporate CEOs. And I had been sitting on that committee, the trade committee, the infrastructure committee, et cetera, things that are important to our business, to our members. And I thought, well, I absolutely will do that. I'm grateful to be not just speaking for our business, but for the necessity of immigration reform for businesses and for the economy. And that's the important, focus for the Business Roundtable and for CEOs who are a part of that, to talk about pathways for legal immigration, why that's such a driver for economic growth, and that we need some reform.
And since then, a lot has happened. One of the most headline-grabbing efforts recently was a proposal to charge $100,000 fees for H-1B visas. What was your response to that proposal? What impact do you believe it would have on American business?
I think that there had been discussion of H-1B visa reform previously. There had been an idea that there had been, some kind of gaming the system going on. That happened in kind of an immediate, bit of a surprising manner. So what we're trying to do is understand the specifics of that. And fortunately, the Business Roundtable is pretty active at trying to, they're working with experts, my chief of staff also, and my staff, working on what is in this bill, what is really required, how can businesses react to this, how should they react to this, et cetera. We're still trying to get some clarity on that, because there are other things that are underway, that the administration is talking about from a visa perspective. And I think what you would hear from a lot of tech CEOs, especially, is the importance of immigration and H-1B visas. So we're still working to get the specifics of what this will mean. What we heard from the administration is this will be for new visas, not for existing visas. And again, one comment I'd make, when I'm with other CEOs, I think one of the things they're looking at is the efficiency of travel, the efficiency of staff movement. This has been a little bit more disrupted, and they're trying to get some clarity on what the policy is for the administration, how they should think about that so they can plan for their business, because I think that's what all of us would want. So that's what we're working on right now.
Okay, more to come there. I just want to remind everyone you'll have the opportunity to ask Beth questions. So if you have any, start thinking, and we'll come to you. You've long spoken about this idea of working on policy, not politics. But in today's era, we arguably do see a lot of CEOs seeming to play politics to, for example, win favorable trade terms and more. So do you think that's still possible? Has your personal definition of what's politics and what's policy changed at all?
Well, that's a complex question. This is why you're in that group, right? I work, and my team works with both parties. We work with administrations. I am not a politician. I am here to advocate for policies that I think are enablers for the American economy, for rural America, for agriculture, for the food system. My note is that I think most of us, and certainly before, I'm going to admit to myself, I've been with the company now 13 years. It's not like I was a farmer beforehand, like I understood it. As I've said before, I don't think detasseling corn one summer when I was 12 really qualifies me. Rather, what I would observe is that we are lucky. We're food self-sufficient. And many countries are not. And the food system, and especially exports, this is a geopolitical issue. This is a policy issue. You have to understand the economics. You have to understand the strength of the dollar. You have to understand tariffs, trade, et cetera. What a privilege. What a privilege to be engaged in these conversations, to provide insight, which is what I try to do with the current administration, when I did the previous administration, when I do the House, the Senate, et cetera. In this business especially, and I've been in business now, it will almost be 40 years, can you imagine? Because I'm still looking fresh. I just want you to know. I've got my aura, and I'm looking at you people, okay? But the reality is that what a privilege to be in to have this responsibility where I can inform, where I can advocate for things that I think will be differential. When I took the role, what I was noting was the lack of technology in these communities. Still 20% of rural America lacks broadband access. Can you imagine? And with all those other challenges, what do we know? When communities transition, they have to have at least technology so that they can have job creation, available health care, et cetera. And so, I think what a privilege to have the opportunity to convey this information, to advocate on behalf of things that I think are important to all of us. This shouldn't be just viewed as, well, rural, that's interesting, Beth. I mean, if you ate today, think of farmer, and think about the investments we need to remain strong from an export market perspective, from a solid economy perspective. And I think that is why I talk about policy, not politics.
So it still stands?
I still believe that. I believe it's important to talk policy with those that need to be engaged in this discussion.
Okay. On that note, Trump has reportedly been considering some sort of bailout for American farmers. Something between 10 and 13 billion has been reported for farmers who have been hurt by tariffs, other economic headwinds. Keeps getting delayed, but is that aligning with what you have seen recently? Do you support that plan? Is a bailout what farmers need, or they need something else from the federal government?
Well, I think the farmers, if you're watching shows where they're interviewed, and I know you tried to do same, they'll tell you they want trade arrangements. They just want to compete, right? They want trade. I want to remind us that I was on the President's Export Council, previous administration. The trade agenda was not as robust as we needed it in terms of new trade arrangements for farmers, for agriculture. And so, what do I think about this? I don't even love the word bailout because it makes it feels pejorative, right? Like, well, we got to help them again. I think we want the farmer to be successful. I think we want the farmer to be profitable. It is in all of our best interests. So what's going to happen? This payment, which is considered a bridge payment, in the tax bill, there were some adjustments in what they call reference pricing, which will help crop insurance for the next cycle, but is not accessible to a farmer right now. So many farmers, because again, reminder, there are no soybean orders from China. I met with the trade ambassador, with Jameson Greer. We talked about this after he talked to the Chinese delegation, et cetera. So, there is a requirement, a necessity to say, how can these farmers get operating loans and make it to the next crop cycle, which is going to happen here soon. So in this December-January timeframe, when they're accessing new operating loans and getting with their bankers, what is this going to mean? One other comment about that is what's happening is that there's some level of consolidation and a farmer decides, hey, I'm not going to farm anymore, right? And maybe they don't have somebody else to take over the farm. And so normally a farm might go to auction, okay? And what that means generally is other farmers in the area might come and say, oh, I want to buy that land, I want to access that land. But land is also an asset. And what we're seeing is financial firms come in and buy land. And what does that mean? Well, my chief staff was talking about an auction that was near her family farm in northern Iowa. And she said there were 400 bidders and 399 were financial buyers and one was a local farmer. Well, what might that mean? Again, on the one hand, it elevates land price, which allows them to collateralize. On the other hand, there are more farmers over the age of 75 than under the age of 32. It's difficult to afford land. And so then what might that mean? Well, could you then step into more contract farming? That is a total rewiring of rural America, what you might think of it. Now, it's new and it's nascent and it's growing, and it's something that we all need to think of, okay, well, what might happen here? What is the future? How might I think about this? And so, these are the kind of things I think that we pay attention to, certainly I pay attention to and talk about from a policy perspective.
Paying attention to a lot. Did we have any questions for Beth? One? Okay, if we can get a microphone to you.
Listen, I don't have access to the butter tennis shoes that they're putting out in the marketing team, so don't even ask. I can't do it.
Noted. I won't ask either.
Okay, right? I don't.
Hi, my name's Gretchen Ryder. Fourth generation farm and ranch girl.
Thank you.
Married to a farmer.
There you
Used
are.
to be the U.S. Trade Rep spokesperson and the only one in my family who doesn't work in ag. I have 3 daughters.
I'm sorry.
I know. I support the farm. But I have 3 daughters. You talked about the rewiring. What do you expect that rewiring to look like in the future, and how will it impact those generational farmers? Do you think that these companies, these financiers will come in and really fund these farmers, or do you think they will take it over and be corporate farms now?
Well, I don't know, it's funding or corporate farms. I mean, because a lot of times people will say, well, are you a corporate farm? I'm like, well, we're a cooperative, so I'm not sure what we're meaning by that. The reality, what I'm pointing to, because I can't have a vision to say 5 years from now, this is going to look 10 years from now, but I'm going to talk about the dramatic consolidation that occurs. And I'll talk about, this is, now we're really going to go into the weeds here, but consolidation, for instance, for hog producers. It consolidated so rapidly that now you're tied to an integrator, right? That's basically. To get into it. Okay, there we go. Because we're talking now. But, so that dramatic consolidation means you're tied to an integrator. And is that a wrong or a right? I don't know. What I would say is that most of the, in my article that you mentioned that I wrote, you say, well, contract farming, does it put down roots the same as farming right now? These communities, how were they formed? What is the investment? And a lot of these farmers, they're the baseball coach, they're the ambulance driver, they're the fireman, it's in when I'm in those communities, and they say, well, do people think I'm crazy? Well, first of all, I just want everybody to know, and you'd be a good representative of this, people aren't trying to flee to the coasts, right? Like they want to leave their town. That's not true. They want to have a robust life with their children, with their family, right there in their communities. And I think they just want the same level of investment to support them. Available health care, fresh food, a good education, etc. So when we talk about consolidation, we talk about the future, I think part of it is what is the level of investment we're going to make in these communities to make sure that they have a robust future. I think that is what is critically important.
That speaks to something else that Land O'Lakes has taken on recently, is kind of addressing stereotypes that you see of rural America in our culture. You recently announced a partnership with Getty Images to start to do that, and I think there's more to come. So what are the most harmful stereotypes you see about rural America, and what impact do these portrayals have? And you've just described kind of what they're missing.
Well, I wish some of you could be with me in these communities on the farm when I've got my boots on, got my hat on. Sometimes they let me climb on the combine, but most of the time, no. Because they're like, you could get hurt. And I'm like, I think I'll be okay. What I think is that there's this concern I have, or some folks have, like, do you think that they're just, they don't get it? Kind of slow. And I would say the farmer is the original entrepreneur. They are resilient. They are pragmatic. They invest in their communities. There's joy. Me traveling this summer, I had so much fun, to be out on the farm with these families where they're talking about harvest, where they're looking forward to talking about their kids, what's happening. And so I don't know what people's perception is. The red barn on the hill, is that a good thing, a joyous thing? Again, I say, these investment in these communities, and what I see is the farmer rightfully has been resilient through so much, feeds us, less than 1% of the population, and we should be grateful. We want them to be profitable. And those images are to say, let's reset our thought process here about these families, these communities, et cetera. I think that's a healthy dialogue, and we want to try to make sure that's visible.
And this has come up in the conversation about immigration as well, talking about the impact of this work not just on labor, but also on these communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've built, some of the immigrants that work, and probably a little close to half of the labor in agriculture are immigrants, and many of them have been with a farmer 20, 25 years and have raised their own children there, and they're robustly connected. And so, it's quite an emotional conversation to say, we want visa reform, we want immigration reform to have access, because again, for a farmer especially, if they don't have access to labor, it's a devastating issue.
Seriously. Okay, I think we have one question over here, but thank you, Karen. If you can keep it really quick, we appreciate it.
Hi, Beth. How are you?
Hi, good. It's good to see you.
Nice to see you, too. We've talked a lot about AI, data analytics. How do you see that changing the future of farming and food distribution?
Such a great question. We are involved, and we think of ourselves as a data company. We have significant partnerships with Microsoft. I was just talking with Satya and his team on AI processing centers, et cetera, and the placement in rural America. We have we have small language models. Still, there's an ecosystem involved in agriculture. We have agronomists, we have expertise, we have data capture at farm level by acre type of a thing. And we also have applied research plots where we have data capture. And so what we're trying to do is innovate from a growth perspective to have the small language model interact with information that allows an agronomist, because again, the farmer still wants to have the conversation with the agronomist. They want to be right there on farm, to have a differential insight that will help a farmer make a more profitable decision and more impactful for their land, soil health being critical for a farmer.
Amazing. Thank you for the great question, and thank you so much, Beth.
Thank you.
Awesome. Here's a slide. Dame Emma Walmsley is the first woman to lead a major pharmaceutical company, GSK. Ranked number 20 on this year's Most Powerful Women list, over the course of 9 years at the helm of the company, Emma has overseen transformative milestones, including new cancer drug discoveries. She recently announced that